would he be love, right? That's our
Right.
track here. Would he be love without choice?
Or would there be an opportunity for love without choice?
Yeah.
You know?
I think everybody would agree
Yeah.
that in order to be truly loving, you have to offer choice.
And then with choice came
Right.
destruction.
Right. And we're back. What's happening? It is not just Sunday.
Not just
Cam
Sunday,
here.
Jason.
And we're back for episode
Number two?
in season one on
one.
What is Love? Or
Baby,
Love is God Love.
Is God Love.
God Love.
It is the month of
Tracking
love.
through. So if you missed our last podcast, the last episode, we talked about God is love.
Yes.
Even in the midst of all the craziness that this world can bring. Mm-hmm. Right?
And introduced anchor scriptures from 1 John
Yep.
and from Ephesians chapter 3.
Yep.
Kind of detailing the idea that scripture does, in fact,
Confirm.
say that God is love.
Yeah.
And that his love for us is, well, at least according to Ephesians, is beyond reasonable comprehension.
Yeah.
That Paul prays for those people and says, I want you to know, because the effects of you
Right.
having an understanding of God's love for you are far and wide and very beneficial to creation, which we believe that we are God's creation and that we need it. We need to know that he loves us.
Yeah.
But then the whole concept of this season is, well, prove it.
Yeah, like in the middle of all of that, right? In the middle
Yeah.
of life and tragedy and evil and trauma and natural disasters and political powers and all those things. Like those are episodes that we have lined up. How does God's love? How can we see God's love even in those things? And so we spent a little bit of time just kind of unpacking, like, you know, what love is, the perception of love, and the American idea, westernized idea of love being attached to feeling. And that even the idea of like being completely fearless is a scary thing, because perfect love casts out fear. And so to fully rely, fully trust, and fully accept God's love, there is a casting out of fear from this present day darkness and all the things that come with it. And for some of those, that's scary. Like, that's a loss of control. But we talked about some of these words, so I just want to recap. Because I feel like we left them a little bit. We went through one, but then we got off and we were like, hey, there's another one that is
and really
important.
And it was my fault, because I was like, love is logical.
Hey, we're learning, right?
It's not,
we're learning. We're here. But as we look at those words, we did cover hesed, which was the Hebrew word for love, loving kindness, and fidelity, loyalty, patience, mercy, grace, forgiveness, covenantal faithfulness, and salvation. So it was that word. You also get Ahab, which is to love, and Dod, which is the romantic type of love. So for love, Hebrew had 3 different words. And then when you go to the Greek, you get even more words. And so when you're walking through the New Testament, and every time you see the word love, to understand that there are different loves that they're talking about.
Which one? Yeah.
Considering the context. And so you have eros, which is like a sexual romantic love, which you don't actually see in the New Testament scriptures. You see a little bit in the Septuagint translation, the old, like they kind of use that word as like relational love between people. But we don't see that in the Greek manuscripts of the New Testament, but it was in their language, right? It was a word. It was a Greek word for love. Phileo, phileo, depending on your phonetics or where you're from in the country, how you pronounce.
Which phonetical region?
Phonetical region. That is a fraternal love, or like a friendly love. And it gives examples of just like closer than a brother, like that kind of love that you would have with somebody that is not a romantic love. But then the one that we see the most, when especially relating to Jesus, to God, Jesus who is God, the Holy Spirit, God's love for us, is agape, which is self-sacrificial love. And this word kind of like connotates a conscious action rather than an emotional feeling.
A choice.
Right. It is a covenant. It is a choice to love. And that's the love that we get from Jesus.
Yeah.
It wasn't this emotional thing. It was a choice that he made.
And different people feel differently. Right. I mean, I've met some folks that they were like, okay, well, my salvation experience wasn't exactly like mine.
Yeah.
You know, or mine wasn't like yours, where there's this, I mean, for me personally, even in the salvation experience, I was very emotional.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't stop crying. I didn't know what was wrong with me, right? Like
Right.
it was just like something broke. But then everybody doesn't experience God in that same way.
Yeah. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
there. I mean,
Yeah.
at 12 for sure, I wasn't there. It was very much like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it wasn't
Like,
until
okay,
later in life
okay.
where I kind of had to walk through like, oh, this is
Yeah.
what it means. And then you feel a little bit more, but
Sure.
it's just an understanding
Yeah.
of that has said that agape love,
Yeah.
that it was self-sacrificing, and it really wasn't about the feeling.
Yeah, believers, unbelievers alike, you can understand this.
Yeah.
That if you're married, maybe, or if you have parents, you don't
Yes.
always feel for
Right.
those people, and sometimes your feeling for those people is not what you would equate
It's
with
not good.
love, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
they make me angry, you know. Sometimes have me thinking things I shouldn't be thinking about, hurting somebody,
Right.
You know.
Right?
But then that's the deal is that love really is logical.
Yeah.
Love is more than you
Covenantal.
can
It's a
understand.
commitment,
Yeah.
a choice rather than a feeling. Because if it is a feeling, and
Yeah.
people say this all the time, like feelings are fleeting.
Yeah.
And so it comes and it goes, and then when it goes, we're like, well, that person doesn't love me, or God doesn't love me, and that's not
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
true.
yeah, and we way overuse the word. Man, we go to McDonald's. Man, I love those fries.
Right.
You know, I love this and I love that.
All
That's my
that.
thing. Yeah. So
Very, very
Yeah.
overused in our context, which
Yeah.
then makes it difficult to unpack these kind of things. Where we say,
Yeah.
hey, God is love, and so what does that mean?
What do you mean?
Is
Yeah.
that God is a
Yeah.
feeling? So when I feel God,
Right.
it's good for me. And like, no, okay, we just want to kind of scratch that one off and say, hey, we're trying to widen the view of love here,
Yeah.
right? Which is very important to today's conversation
it is.
around if God is love, why is there so much evil in the world?
Yeah.
Like if he's a loving God and he loves us and all creation and we're made in his image and all of these things that we're taught,
Yeah.
then why the heck?
And I just want to say I don't believe that there's a genuine. Well, I don't want to give like an overly blanketed statement, but I
Right.
don't think there can be many genuine believers who
Mhm.
don't have to face this at some point. Everybody has to face it at some point. If you're going to
Yeah.
have faith in God,
Yeah.
or a God who created all things, then
Yeah.
and you call him good. Everybody is,
Yeah.
you deal with your own stuff, but there's
Right.
also stuff externally that you
Right.
notice too that you might not come up with a
Yeah.
2 + 2 = 4
Right. Right.
kind of answer, but I would say that the answer to this question is very personal,
Yeah.
and you've got to get there for yourself. There's nobody else that you're going to be able to quote,
Yeah.
to say that, okay, this is the answer,
Yeah.
because there's a reality. So there's some stuff that me and Cam have been walking through, reading through. One of the things, and I think this is called relearn.org.
Yeah.
Was
Got a
one
really
of the
good article.
sources,
Yeah.
that Cam came up with. And they say something at the beginning, or give kind of a testimony that introduces the topic, I think, in a really good way. It says, this guy who's writing it said that he was 19 years old when a tsunami off the coast of Indonesia killed over 250,000 people.
Yeah. As well. You were alive.
Yeah. I was.
I was alive too.
So
I
were
was
you.
alive
So
too.
were you.
I was just a lot younger than you were.
Okay, in the comments, were you alive?
I was a lot younger when that happened.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all these other things. Like I was alive at 9/11.
3,000 people. He quotes that, or he sources that, and he says that was just a few years later in 2001.
Yeah.
Still remember where I was that day.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't believe it because
It was- it
school
was
shut
wild.
down.
Yeah, it was wild.
Literally every teacher turned the TV on.
Yeah.
And we watched the news all day long.
Yeah. It was crazy. I wasn't even at school. I was at a dentist appointment
Really?
with my mouth wide open.
Yeah.
And they come over the radio and they're like, "Hey, the World Trade Center, someone flew a plane into it." And
At that point,
my
I didn't
mom
even
like,
know what. Yeah, I didn't even know what the World Trade Center was.
I don't even know if I finished getting my
The
teeth
Twin
cleaned.
Towers,
We just,
right.
I think it was like, hey, we gotta go. Like we gotta go.
Still
pick
got this
up your
little brown
sister.
spot back here.
Because everybody was freaking out. I was
They
like-
were
everybody
because
was freaking out.
there was a fear that terrorism was going to break out all over the country.
Right.
Well, not just there, and
Yeah.
surely there was a plot for more. I do remember early elementary school. He says 2 years before that, so it had to have been what 99.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I don't think school shootings were prevalent before that time. It was called Columbine.
Yeah. At least we didn't hear about them.
Right.
I mean,
so this guy says that he was in ninth grade when 12 students were murdered. One teacher, at Columbine High School in Colorado.
Yeah.
Still remember that. And then you get those things. So he says this. He says, the evidence is in. Evil is all around us and it's not slowing down. But why? Why so much brokenness? And more importantly, as Christians, how can we explain the why? Mm-hmm. Why the God of the Bible continues to allow evil to permeate our world? That is, how can God, who is all-powerful, sovereign, righteous, loving, and good, permit his creation to be overwhelmed by war, or things like divorce and murder and tragedy and death? How can the two realities exist? Yeah. That God is love.
Yeah.
And these things continue to happen in our world. So this is relearn.org. We'll leave that for you.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to do that. It's a really good article. He goes in a really good direction. Probably the same direction where, I think once you deal with this issue where most people kind of land in their own thought. Yeah. So it's a really good resource.
And anytime you think about this issue, right, of evil, like we're dealing specifically with this idea of evil, and because you say, hey, the question is, why does God allow evil? Like, if he's all loving, he is love. Yeah. Well, why would he allow evil? And that kind of brings to like the causation question of does he cause evil?
Right. And so does he allow? You got to deal with the word allow too.
Yeah.
Like your vocabulary in this, in your own self-talk, and then how you present this to other people, and how you choose to believe in your own mind. You know, we were just saying that everybody's an iceberg.
Everybody
that you see this stuff.
You only see a certain percentage.
Yeah, and that stuff underneath where you only know you only know how you address God, or what the implied beliefs are about God when you come to him in prayer, when you come read the scripture.
Of course.
So this is one of those things where you're going to have to reach deep, y'all. You're going to have to go under the surface of who you are down there where the rest of you exist.
Right? Like we've been formed by a lot of things, and like you're thinking about these big ideas, like what is God love, and you're wrestling with like evil, which is like the number one Googled thing every year.
Yeah.
Like, why does God allow suffering, or why does God allow evil? And like, you really do have to dig. And for everybody, that journey is different, because we're bringing our past experiences of whether it's church or parents or grandma, and like, hey, just don't question it, or this is the way it is. And like, in how we read scripture, like we bring all our biases to these kind of questions. And so to be like, hey, wait a minute, which of these is causing me not to be able to see this from the lens that it's supposed to be seen? And that even goes for us. Like, we're gonna have a conversation, but I mean, there's pieces of it that we bring into it that other people won't. And that we see, and like everybody kind of cooks these things differently, right? Like different temperatures and different things. Like, everybody's on their own journey.
Yeah, and there's some points that are given by. It's a man named. We'll leave this for you too, but this looks like a big old book, but it's really not. Like, that section is not this big. It's just a section of this book, but it's called When Skeptics Ask. It's by Norman Geisler. It helped me a long time ago. It's been helping me now, and we're kind of bringing this,
coming back through it.
Coming back through and doing it now. So we're going to go through some of the points that he makes and try to kind of parse these things along. Before we get into all of that, I do want to just for a second, Kim and I talked about the idea that a lot of the reason that we question the validity of God as it relates to bad things and evil, a lot of that really does come from our mindset as an American person. That a lot of people across the world that experience life and experience evil and experience tragedy in such much greater ways than we do.
I mean, persecution purifies your view of the world.
And that just goes back to, we talked about it last week, but it goes back to just being really careful about the assumptions that you bring to your relationship with God, that you make sure you are reading the Bible to find out as God revealed himself, rather than assuming things about God that might not be true.
That's a tricky one, though.
I
mean, that's a tricky one. For us as humans to be able to unpack and be like,
I'm
coming with no bias, no nothing. Like, man, it's very difficult, but I think there is a reality there, right? Like, this conversation comes up in our Googles and probably may not come up in, like, the Chinese underground church Googles, right? Like, they're not asking the question of, like, why do these two things exist? But our questions go like, to something like this, the logical transition. Like, I love how he puts it. He's like, God is the author of everything. Like, most people, hey, we can get there on that. He made everything. Evil is something. Therefore, God is the author of evil.
That's a train of thought.
Like, that is the thing, right?
But it's logical. It makes sense. Evil is something.
Yes.
Or is it?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah.
So, and God made everything. So to
Right.
unpack that, how I've dealt with that personally is, and he kind of gives some guidance in this way toward the end of that chapter, but the understanding that evil is the absence of good, not something.
Right.
It's the absence of what is good rather than a created thing itself.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
like, if you go to, I don't know, Jen, that's my wife, likes these true crime things. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So like
yeah.
we could fall asleep to like the world's worst serial killers or something.
That's pretty dark.
But it makes me think, okay, so is that person
Yeah.
evil? Like, are they evil?
Mm-hmm.
I think their actions
Right.
are absent of God's goodness, and
Right.
then therefore those things continue and they happen.
Yeah. So God makes everything perfect. Like we get that. Genesis, right? Like in the beginning, everything was perfect.
Yeah.
And then sin.
Yeah.
Sin breaks everything up. It creates a distance. It really creates good and bad.
Yeah.
Right? Moral. It creates this idea of a new paradigm shift that enters the world at that moment. And so then we have to wrestle with these things.
Yeah.
Of, man, okay, so where'd that come from and why is it here? And like if God created everything perfect, but the perfect creatures did what was imperfect, and now we have this mess
Yeah.
that is evil, that we have
Yeah.
evil, right?
Yeah.
And, could it have happened any other way?
Yeah. Well, make it make sense,
Right. Right.
But at the end of the day, not answering the question for you or for me
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, what was God's intent in creating?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
could creation be what it is without choice? Like, without genuine choice?
Or would he be love, right? That's our
Right.
track here. Would he
Yeah.
be love without choice?
Or would there be an opportunity for love without choice?
Yeah.
You know?
I think everybody would agree.
Yeah.
That in order to be truly loving, you have to offer choice.
And then with choice came
Right.
destruction.
Right. So it's interesting because of the choice, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of like love and freedom. Like they're kind of
Yeah.
like they kind of coexist a little bit in the same world of like, okay, he creates Adam and Eve, but he gives them choice.
Mm-hmm.
He creates the nation of Israel and then he gives them choice. He creates us and gives us choice.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives us free will in this idea, but the presence of choice, there's an opportunity for the presence of bad.
Yeah.
Right. Our actions, our decisions can create bad outcomes, but it doesn't change him and his love.
Yeah.
Because love is giving us freedom. Love is giving us choice. And outside of that, I think everybody agrees, like love without choice is really just not love.
Yeah.
But love can exist without
Yeah.
feeling, but never without choice.
Yeah. And then we talked about through those things. Okay, so fine. Good and well. We
Yeah.
have choice.
Yeah.
And then I think everybody can understand a logical argument that, okay, everybody has a choice to do whatever they want to do. And then therefore, many people or some people, whatever, will make bad decisions that then impact other people.
Right.
Right? Which,
Right.
which along with the whole thing is, okay, sin came to the world through Adam and Eve. And now
Yeah.
it's broken. And then therefore, over time, you have things like natural disasters that come from. I mean,
Yeah.
you can go back and look in
Yeah.
Genesis and all those things, and then where we are today, and the difference in the environment, and all that stuff. With the first murder, and with people having choice, that kind of thing. So then, I think another train of thought. Then I think everybody can get with, okay, people make bad decisions. It impacts other people.
Mm-hmm.
But why can't God just stop those people who are gonna, stop bad things from happening?
Right.
I was listening to, and we both listened to, there's a Catholic father that gave an example of, one day this man was changing his baby on a changing table, and he turned around to grab a diaper, and he lost his baby. In such a bad way. But then the church trying to be helpful, and trying to be comforting was it's all God, it's all part of God's plan. And it's gonna be okay. Was it? Was it part of God's plan? Was it His perfect will that would happen?
Like that idea.
Yeah.
Because what is dangerous on this slope, Because I do believe, right, like this idea of like, can you truly know good without evil? Can you know good without bad? Can you know a truth without lies? Like if the flip sides are not there, like can we know that God is love if we don't know what the opposite of that is, right? Can we know that he is all powerful if we know something that is not all powerful? Like I think that him and his all omniscient, like all of his power, right? All of his might, all of his wisdom, he knows that evil needed, like that almost sounds crazy coming out of my mouth, right? Like evil, there was a necessity for the choice, because they needed to know that, hey, I am one side and there is another side. But in that realm, when you're talking about this correlation of love and this correlation of God allowing evil things to happen, does not mean that he is the cause of the thing that is just heinous. Like he didn't,
or that he wanted that to happen,
off the changing table,
willed that to happen.
No,
that his perfect will was not for that to happen, was not for 9/11, was not for Columbine, was not for the tsunami to happen. His perfect will was not there. But there is something to say, though, that was there an allowance?
Yes. Through
free choice.
That allowance is not causation.
Yeah. That God. So did God, then is the question, did God cause the tsunami? Did God cause the death of this child? Did God cause 9/11 or Columbine?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. No. And I think that's what you're saying is that, say it again. So you're saying causation.
Causation? No. The correlation,
allowance,
right?
The
correlation
causation.
Is not causation.
Yeah.
Because God allows for choice, which then allows for action, which then allows for evil to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an allowance for it.
Yeah.
It does not correlate that God is directing all of the evil things to happen. He is not the cause of all the evil things. There is an allowance for them.
Yeah.
But he is not the cause. Because that's the correlation we like to make.
Yeah.
It's like, because he is all-knowing and all-powerful, he could stop it. He could do all those things.
That was my next direction, too, is that intervention then.
Yeah.
Because we still believe that God can intervene when asked or when he wants to.
Right.
That one is difficult for me, and I don't have a good answer. Other than like chalking it up to, okay, this is the sovereignty of God. Yeah. I cannot explain or understand why God would choose to intervene like in this person's sickness and not this person's sickness.
Yeah. 100%.
Because we've watched it happen
100%.
Personally. I mean, we've watched it happen in our church and in churches before and everywhere where you pray for somebody and it just seems that everything is, but then I pray just as hard and just as vigorously or whatever, and then that same thing is just not the same outcome.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is like, okay, we're saying God did not cause.
Yeah.
Allowed.
Yeah.
Has the opportunity to intervene, and sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
Does that affect his reality?
Does that make him less loving?
Yeah. Does it?
If it's based on a feeling, yes.
Yeah.
If it's based on understanding him as God, no.
Then in the logic of love, that's why you get this sentiment of, we do believe that God will work all things together for the good for those who are called, who love him and are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
We live with that reality. And that at some point, this is why I was saying in the beginning, you can't go 2 = 4.
Right.
Right? You can't do it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you look at the logic of love, the logic of God's love, which is beyond a reasonable comprehension.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, you've got to make a leap of faith that's more about trusting God rather than the questioning of his existence.
Yeah,
because
or
of the
his
pain,
care for me.
Yeah, because of the pain that I experience or the misunderstanding that I have or any of those things. Yeah.
Which is hard. Like
it's
just
difficult,
that, even saying some of these things, right? Like I understand.
Yeah.
I understand the weight.
Yeah.
And I understand how people mess it up. Like, man, like,
or just get frustrated and disappointed and dejected and say, I would rather just not go to his presence and deal with this.
Right. Like, why doesn't he just make it all
to
perfect?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just take away the pain, take away all those things?
And to your point, though, what you were saying, without those things show us our need for him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave there, but understand that I also believe.
And if he takes all that away, then on the opposite end of the spectrum, right, we're like, hey, he's not loving because he's not letting me choose.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So where are we at, right? He understands the full depths of love. So he creates the fact of freedom and of choice. And we perform the act of freedom. I love this quote from the book, right?
Yeah.
And then he says, he made evil possible when we make evil actual. Like what we do with what we've been given. A lot of the stuff that happens in the world is because of evil action, right? Not all those things. Sometimes it just happens because of a result of sin in the world, and we live in a broken world. Our bodies break down. They're not what they're supposed to be. Things happen. And that's hard to wrestle with, because then you feel like, well, God, I'm serving you. I'm doing all these things. Why do you not just bless me? And those are harder to wrestle with. Those kind of evils, the absence of good, the absence of like God intervening, are harder than like, hey, this guy took a gun and shot a bunch of people. Like, that's an evil person performing an evil action. But those things that don't seem to have an answer,
and I just feel it. Jesus said, I feel, I know this is weird to some of y'all, but I feel him saying it to me now. Like, in this world, you will have trouble.
Yeah, guaranteed it. He had trouble.
But then he says, take heart, because I've overcome the world. That's what Jesus said. And I think at the end of the day, I can't leave the episode without saying, I really do believe, though, that the promise that is bankable, that will never change, that does not move, is that we do have a God that didn't promise that these things would not happen, that didn't promise that bad things wouldn't happen to good people and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe that we see that through Scripture as a promise. We bring that as a hope.
That he's in it with us. We see that promise.
That's it. That he doesn't leave. That he's accessible.
And that's love.
That's the thing.
The allowance.
Yeah.
But the never leaving. So I think it's important to leave here because we do have a future of hope.
Yes.
Where it all goes away. Where it does all end.
Yes.
As we live now, there will be evil. To know the good, to know the love that's everlasting, to know the one that's never going to leave us or forsake us. But here's this correlation, like, why can't it be stopped? People will think this way. If God is all good, he would defeat evil. If God is all powerful, he could defeat evil. But evil is not defeated, hence there is no such good God. So that is not where we should end.
Yeah.
Because the idea of freedom, the idea of choice, the idea of a loving God is to give allowance for us and to cover us. And so to leave with this, if God is all good, he would defeat evil. If God is all powerful, he could defeat evil. But evil is not yet defeated. Therefore,
turn to your neighbor and say yet.
Therefore, one day, evil will be defeated. It's the idea of like now and not yet. The kingdom is now and not yet. He's still working this out, but he's never stopped loving us. Yeah. And so to open up our eyes to that is that even the crazy idea that to have evil means that you then can see good. Yeah. In the absence of that, it can't exist by itself. Yeah. But it says, man, God is love. Could he do it? Yeah. Yes. Do we want him to do it? Absolutely. Yes. And one day he will do it.
He will.
But maybe not today.
By faith.
Yeah.
So we live. I hope that you somehow through this topic.
I don't know, man.
But find comfort. Find comfort and find strength to dig. Yeah. That's the thing is to dig beneath the water, you know, and go do work with God that does lead to genuine faith and not just blind faith. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Yeah. Look for the resources When Skeptics Ask, Norman Geisler and relearn.org. Yeah. And of course, reach out to us because we would love to walk you through anything that you have.
And continue. I think just as we close, there's a verse that just keeps popping in my head as we've been talking about this, is that to continue to work out your own faith. Yes. With what? Fear and trembling. Yes. And we're in here asking these questions and we're working that out. And so, look, it can be a scary road to walk down, but he's with you. And so thank you guys for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you next time.